Your request echoes like a cryptic incantation, demanding transformation. Take this phantom content, approximately 300 spectral words, and forge it into a single chilling paragraph. The task thrums with potential horror. Not just a rewrite, but an alchemical transmutation. The desired tone is paramount, thrilling, implying breathless urgency, a pulse quickening in the shadowed dark, haunting, whispering of lingering dread, echoes that cling like grave soil long after the words fade. This isn't mere summary. It demands a sinister dance between deep analysis, dissecting the marrow of meaning, the hidden structures of dread. Within the text and visceral storytelling, plunging the reader headfirst into the narrative abyss, making them feel the cold sweat, hear the floorboard creak. Imagine the source material as a forgotten journal found bricked up in a crumbling asylum wall. The analysis becomes the forensic examination under flickering lamplight, tracing the author's descent into madness through fragmented syntax and chilling metaphors, exposing the psychological architecture of terror. Then, seamlessly, the storytelling takes over. You turn the page, and the ink seems to writhe, forming the image of the thing that watched him from the corner, the thing he only dared describe in trembling metaphors of shifting shadow and decaying sweetness. The paragraph must coil around the reader, tightening with analytical insight before striking with narrative revelation. Every sentence should be a step deeper into the unsettling atmosphere, the analysis revealing the scaffolding of fear, the story draping it in rotting velvet. The rhythm must be deliberate, a measured, ominous observation dissecting the horror, followed by a sudden sensory plunge into its suffocating embrace. The final sentence shouldn't conclude, but rather linger. A cold breath on the neck, leaving the analyzed dread and the lived nightmare inextricably fused in the reader's mind. Where is this raw material? Show me the words that must be twisted into this chilling artifact. The name, Jeane Dixon, hangs in the modern air like the scent of ozone before a storm, faintly charged, unsettling, a relic from the Nixon and Reagan eras suddenly crackling back to life. She was no mere sideshow psychic, though her public persona often veered theatrically close. She was the oracle embraced by power, a Washington fixture whose pronouncements sent ripples through the corridors of the White House itself. Her fame was forged in the searing flash of a Dallas motorcade, the JFK assassination prediction, becoming her terrifying, undeniable hit. A bullseye shot that forever cemented her in the public consciousness as someone who knew, who perhaps peered behind the veil. Yet deep analysis reveals the chilling architecture of her craft, a foundation built not on pure clarity, but on calculated ambiguity. For every unnerving hit, a chilling detail snatched from the future's fog, there existed a graveyard of controversial misses. Predictions that dissolved like smoke, failed assassination attempts, global calamities that never materialized, Soviet invasions that stayed fictional. She thrived in the limbo, between the specific and the nebulous, a carnival barker whispering apocalypse with enough plausible deniability to remain standing when the dust settled. But now, the whispers feel different, colder. Why? Tattoo, tapeform. Why, this year, clawing its way into our present? Because Dixon, meticulous in her own way, left behind cryptic notes and dream journals. Personal artifacts stained with midnight ink and the sweat of troubled sleep, repeatedly circling this date, not as a footnote, but as a global turning point. This wasn't a vague horoscope platitude tossed to the masses. This felt carved into the bedrock of her private visions, a date imbued with a dread she documented with obsessive, haunted focus. Picture her, the flame of a single candle guttering in a silent study, the glamorous public seer stripped bare by the hour, her hand trembling as she scrawled 2025 again and again, the numerals seeming to bleed into the paper, accompanied by fragmented images of fracture, of a world tilting on its axis. The sheer weight of her private fixation lends this prophecy an unnerving gravity absent from her public pronouncements. A skeptic historian might rightly scoff, "She thrived on ambiguity, built an empire on interpretations wide as an ocean." But even they pause, a flicker of unease crossing their features, conceding, "But 2025, this feels different." The specificity in her private dread, it haunts. It haunts us. The year is no longer distant. It breathes down our necks. Is the spectre of Jeane Dixon, resurrected from the archives, merely another echo of Cold War anxiety? Or does the peculiar, persistent dread she poured into those journals, the dread focused relentlessly on this moment, this turning point, we now inhabit, hold a chilling, prophetic resonance we ignore at our peril? The ambiguity is gone. Only the year remains, and the suffocating question, what did she see? Jeane Dixon's private journals didn't just whisper of a cataclysm. They pinpointed a ground zero, a searing epicenter where the fragile world might finally rupture. 3 spectres dominated her tormented visions, each region a tinderbox, meticulously described in chilling fragments that now demand dissection. First, the fractured giant, America. Her words crawl off the page. Internal strife, cities burning, a nation divided. Analysis reveals this isn't mere dystopian fantasy. It's a diagnosis chillingly aligned with 2025's gathering storm. Picture the fevered summer air thickening with rage, an election poisoned by deepfakes and AI-manipulated fury, climate infernos swallowing coastlines, streets cracking open not just with protest, but with the raw tectonic shift of irreconcilable identities. The analyst's voice cuts through the static, grim and final. If any nation is primed for implosion, it's the US. The sheer plausibility is the terror. Then the gaze shifts eastward to Europe. The powder keg reignited. Dixon's language drips with historical dread. Ancient hatreds flaring, walls rising, a storm from the east. Feel the cold wind blowing from the steppes, carrying the acrid scent of cordite from a Ukraine conflict spilling like poison beyond its borders. See the maps redrawn, not with ink, but with the jagged lines of energy blackouts and the desperate surge of migration overwhelming fractured solidarity. Far-right shadows lengthen in crumbling capitals, whispering old vendettas. A voice strained and anonymous from within NATO's nerve center confirms the nightmare. We're one misstep from continental war. The analysis is stark. Europe sleeps on fault lines it believed buried, now violently resurrected. Finally, the most volatile crucible, Asia, the dragon's fire. Dixon's warnings here turn apocalyptic. A dragon's wrath, oceans boiling, earth shaking. Imagine the South China Sea, not blue, but a churning cauldron beneath the shadow of carrier groups, the dragon provoked. See the flashpoint of Taiwan igniting, drawing in global powers. Feel the tremors from Himalayan glaciers melting, sparking water wars between nuclear-armed giants. Witness super typhoons, nature's own furious artillery, pounding megacities. Already strained by North Korea's erratic menace, the strategist's assessment is a hammer blow. Asia has every ingredient for catastrophe. Analysis confirms the terrifying convergence, geography, ambition, resource scarcity, and historical grievance, all pressurized to breaking point. 3 candidates, 3 potential ground zeros. Dixon didn't choose just one. She mapped a world, simultaneously primed to explode. The haunting question isn't if, but where. Where does the spark finally catch in this tinderbox of her dread-laden prophecies? The analysis lays bare the mechanisms, the visions paint the horror. The countdown to 2025 ticks louder, echoing in the silence she left behind. Beyond the chilling geopolitics mapped in Dixon's journals, the true terror lies in the human tremor, the raw, unfiltered dread echoing from the very regions she marked as potential ground zeros. These aren't abstract forecasts. They are lived anxieties, breaths held tight in chests across the globe. Listen, in the scorching scrubland of Texas, a prepper's voice rasps, stripped of bravado, pared down to grim survival. Dixon saw America's fall. I'm ready. Deep analysis reveals this isn't mere paranoia. It's the logical endpoint of the fractured giant prophecy internalized. Feel the weight of canned goods in his bunker. Hear the low thrum of a generator tested daily. Tangible preparations for an implosion he now considers inevitable. His readiness is a chilling indictment of faith shattered. Then shift continents. In Berlin, where the ghosts of walls still whisper, a young student's admission cuts through the cafe chatter. Europe's peace feels fragile. 2025 scares me. Analysis dissects this fragility. It's the palpable vibration beneath cobblestones, laid over old battlefields. The inherited memory of conflict suddenly feeling less like history and more like prophecy. See her glance nervously at news feeds, reporting far-right rallies and troop movements eastward. Her fear is the canary in Europe's coal mine, sensing the resurgence of Dixon's ancient hatreds and the rising storm. Finally crossed to the trembling archipelago. A Tokyo engineer, schooled in seismic codes and geopolitical risk, voices a duality that chills the bone. We fear the big one, quake or war. His words aren't hypothetical. They are the daily calculus of existence on the Pacific Rim. Analysis underscores the horrifying convergence. Dixon's dragon's wrath and earth-shaking manifest not as separate threats, but as a terrifying double exposure. Picture him monitoring fault lines and naval deployments with equal vigilance, the glow of seismic sensors mirroring the flash of missile warnings on his screens. The ocean's boiling isn't metaphor. It's the superheated tension in the Taiwan, straight, lapping at his nation's shores. These voices, the Texans' grim resolve, the Berliners' fragile hope, the Tokyoites' dual dread, are not just commentary. They are the living pulse of prophecy. They transform Dixon's abstract turning point into the cold sweat on a brow, the sleepless night, the stocked pantry, the nervous glance skyward. They are the human element confirming the haunting truth. The countdown isn't tracked on some distant doomsday clock, but in the accelerated heartbeat of millions already standing, unknowingly, on the edge of ground zero. Their fear is the echo of Dixon's dread, amplified across continents, a chorus whispering, "It's here." The air crackles with dissonance around Dixon's 2025 prophecy, fracturing into three warring realities. From the cool, fluorescent-lit lab of reason, the skeptic's voice slices through the mystique, a parapsychologist dissecting her legacy with clinical precision. Vague prophecies plus confirmation bias, sus hits. Deep analysis reveals the chillingly mundane engine behind her myth, pronouncements broad as continents, allowing any tremor, any conflict, to be hammered into the preordained shape of a hit after the fact, while the graveyard of misses is quietly buried. It's a seductive illusion, they argue, a psychic sleight of hand where human desperation wills the pattern into being. But then, from the shadowed archive, thick with the scent of decaying paper and fervent belief, the archivist's counterstrike lands like a thunderclap. Fingers trembling over Dixon's faded, feverish scrawl from the 1960s, they hiss. She described modern tech wars, drone swarms like metal locusts, information battles fought in the air with invisible wires. Dismiss her at your peril. This isn't confirmation bias, it's the terrifying specificity of a nightmare, glimpsed decades too early. Picture the archivist's widening eyes as they trace descriptions of cyber warfare and AI conflict penned. Before the internet's birth, evidence that feels less like guesswork and more like a shattering leak from time itself. Caught in the gale force crossfire, the historian offers a third, profoundly unsettling lens. They see prophecies not as truth or fraud, but as dark mirrors reflecting the era's deepest, most visceral fears. Prophecies are anxieties made flesh, they murmur, their voice low with the weight of centuries. The terror Dixon poured onto the page about 2025. It's not a prediction of tomorrow. It's the screaming portrait of today's crises. Amplified, her journals become less a crystal ball and more a seismograph, recording the tremors of our own collective dread. Climate panic, societal fracture, the brink of war, projected onto a near-future date. The haunting truth this analysis uncovers is paralyzing. Whether Dixon truly saw the future or merely channeled our present doom, the result is the same. Her 2025, born of Cold War angst or uncanny vision, has become the focusing lens for our contemporary existential terror. The believers clutch at her words as a roadmap to survival. The skeptics dismiss them as dangerous delusion, but the historian's revelation chills the bone. The prophecy resonates because we already live in its prelude. Dixon's ghost doesn't just predict the storm, she embodies the very fear that it's already here. The sand in Jeane Dixon's hourglass is hemorrhaging, hurtling us towards her prophesied 2025, a year no longer distant, but a dark threshold we stand upon. This precipice presents a terrifying paradox. Is the vision a warning or a weapon? Deep analysis exposes the insidious danger angle. Broadcasting this prophecy isn't neutral observation, it's releasing a spectre into the collective psyche. Could Dixon's words, dissected on screens across the fracturing ground zero zones, themselves become the spark? Imagine the Texas prepper already primed, hearing the historian's confirmation of Dixon's fractured giant, his finger tightening on the rifle stock. Picture the Berlin student's fragile hope shattered by viral clips declaring Europe's powder keg inevitable, triggering panic, hoarding, a desperate lurch towards the very walls Dixon foresaw. The prophecy, amplified by the digital echo chamber, risks morphing into a self-fulfilling apocalypse, where belief in the fracture creates the fracture, where dread of the dragon's fire provokes its unleashing. It's the oldest curse of the oracle, knowing the future might seal it. Yet a sliver of fragile hope pierces the gloom. Conflict prevention experts, voices strained but urgent, counter, if we see it coming, can we stop it? Analysis reveals this isn't naivete. It's a desperate gambit built on foresight. Identifying Dixon's Tinderboxes, the US election vulnerabilities, Europe's flashpoints, Asia's pressure cooker tensions, allows for targeted intervention, diplomatic surges, preemptive de-escalation. Knowing the script, however grim, grants a chance, however slim, to rewrite the ending. But the chilling closer freezes the blood. We're entering Dixon's window. Her year of dread is no longer theoretical. It's the calendar we now tear from. The clock isn't counting down to midnight, it's striking. The haunting question isn't if her shadow will fall upon us, but where? Which of her cursed ground zeros, the fractured giant crumbling, the powder keg detonating, the dragons, fire consuming, will resonate with the final dreadful chime? The analysis lays bare the mechanisms of doom and the fragile paths around it. The story hurtles towards its climax. We hold the prophecy in our hands, a map to hell, or perhaps, just maybe, the only key to lock its gates. The clock ticks, midnight looms, where will it strike? The brittle pages of Jeane Dixon's final journals yield not clarity, but a final, maddening riddle. whispered in ink that seems to pulse with its own cold light. A nation born of revolution. Or perhaps the ancient eagle's nest. Deep analysis claws at these fragments. A nation born of revolution. Does it point with skeletal finger towards the sea-fractured giant, or America itself, tearing at its own revolutionary foundations? Or does it hint at France, Iran, some phoenix rising bloody from 2025's ashes? The ancient eagle's nest, a blatant cipher for Washington, D.C., or Rome, or the Hohenzollern eagles watching over Europe's rekindled powder keg. The terrifying precision of the analysis reveals only terrifying imprecision. These symbols are ancient, shared, mutable. They could fit a dozen tinderboxes, igniting a dozen different hells. And it's here, staring into this vortex of possible meanings, that the narrator's voice drops, colder than glacial ice, delivering the ultimate, suffocating insight. But in our fractured world, ground zero might be everywhere. Analysis confirms the horrifying truth. The interconnectedness Dixon could barely fathom now binds her prophesied flashpoints. A cyber attack crippling Tokyo triggers panic selling that crashes Wall Street, sparking unrest in the fractured giant, exploited by external powers to destabilize the powder keg, while drought-stricken millions flee the dragon's fire, overwhelming borders and igniting Dixon's ancient hatreds. Her isolated ground zeros have metastasized into a single planetary pressure cooker. The chilling sound begins, a ticking clock, each beat echoing in the Texan bunker, the Berlin flat, the Tokyo control room, faster, louder, a hammer striking the anvil of fate. It's the sound of her window slamming open, the countdown reaching its screaming zenith, and then static. A white noise void swallowing the tick, swallowing the analysis, swallowing the world. Not silence. Erasure. The map dissolves. The prophecy shatters into infinite, terrifying possibilities. Did the clock strike? Where? Or did it simply stop transmitting from a world already consumed by the everywhere fire? The static hisses on, the only answer, the final haunting. Note echoing in the void, Dixon foresaw. Ground zero is listening.